Hi, I'm Zed.
Hi, I'm P.
Welcome to the Not Your Typical Sister podcast. We're two brown girls trying to open the conversation and share our experiences on taboo subjects.
We're not experts or doctors, so we recommend speaking to a professional if you need help or advice. So grab a cuppa, sit back and enjoy the podcast.
Hi everyone.
Hey everyone.
Welcome to this episode of Not Your Typical Sister.
So, what have you been up to, Zed? How's things going?
I'm good, thank you. I just feel like I'm marking my days by how well the kids sleep, and it's not been very good in that department recently. I don't know what it is. It's just Zyra. She's in the middle of the night, she just wakes up and she's screaming, like full on screaming. And I'm like, what is happening? Why are you screaming so much? And there's no reason for it. She's just getting my attention. Like, she's not upset, she's not hurt, she's not hungry, she doesn't need a nappy change because I do all of that. And she just still screams, and she just wants me to stand there and hover over her cot.
Something must be going on. It has to be something. She can't be.
It has to be,
Because
right?
she was doing quite well, wasn't she, with her sleep, like recently, touch wood?
Yeah, she was doing really well, and then it's like, what's happened? She's just gone backwards. I was up for 2 hours in the middle of the night, and then she wakes up at 6 o'clock ready for the day. But it's fine. At least she's only waking up once. That's a positive. So that's what I need to take out from that.
Yes, that's really good.
How have you been?
Yeah, I've been good, thanks. I just got back from holiday. Didn't you come back from holiday as well?
It seems such a long time ago, but yeah, I did.
It's been nice to like get away, get some sun and just like detach from everything.
Yeah, definitely good to get a breath of fresh air. But I always find that when I come back from holiday, it's like everything has doubled. The laundry's doubled, the work has doubled, the cleaning has doubled, everything's doubled. But yeah, it was great to get away for a little while at least.
That's so true, isn't it? Everything just waits for you when you get back.
Yeah, nothing gets done, does it?
Exactly.
In this episode, we will talk about anxiety and we'll touch on mental health a little bit, but because it's such a large topic, we won't go into it in as much detail as we will in a further episode. So I just wanted to share some experiences that I've had in terms of anxiety and how I felt anxious at certain points, the kind of symptoms that I've had, and what I'm trying to do to help improve those symptoms. So I think it would be better to talk about when it all started. I mean, I think I've had anxiety for quite a long time, but I just probably wasn't aware of it as much as I have been in the last couple of years. So I think since COVID and the pandemic hit, so at the start I was literally stuck at home like everyone else, but I wasn't even going out for the food shopping or anything. That was literally my husband, he would do everything. And it was just me and my little one at home. So I wasn't going out for a very long time. And then eventually when I did go out, I was very, very anxious. And I didn't realize how anxious I was until I was in the supermarket and I was just breathing really heavily. And I had to like stop and just try and breathe because I was panicking. Like the aisle felt too small and there was another person coming in the aisle. And I just thought COVID, and I was pregnant at the time, and everything just seemed heightened. And I was just really, really scared. I don't know what exactly I was scared of. But I think looking back at it, I don't know why I was so worried. But I think I was just, it just felt all so bizarre and new to me. Like everyone was wearing masks and there was a one-way system. And yeah, it just felt really bizarre how life had changed. And I think because I was pregnant at the time, I felt even more worried that what if it impacts the baby? And what if I get COVID? Then how am I going to look after my little one? And what am I going to do? And yeah, it was just, that's when I think I properly noticed that I have anxiety in some form. And I think it worsened with the pandemic and being stuck inside for such a long time. That's my first proper experience of it, I think.
I think you're right. I think a lot of people realise, I think that the pandemic sort of brought out a lot of things, a lot of mental health issues that people probably didn't think they have, or maybe they didn't notice. So before the pandemic, being at home, being stuck indoors, maybe like not with anxiety as such, or maybe even with anxiety as such, being stuck with your own thoughts and things like that brought up a lot of issues for a lot of people. And like you said, being stuck indoors and then going out into this world that you haven't been in, everything's new, everything's changed, it's not what you knew, nobody knew what was the right thing to do. All of those things in your mind play up and just create issues that you didn't think were even issues before.
Yeah.
And so things change for people, and I think a lot of people, or at least I've read that quite a lot of people have been struggling with things like anxiety and stuff since the pandemic hit.
Yeah. And I think also when Zaira was born, it was a big thing, because I've had anxiety in relation to Xavier, in terms of he's a very boisterous boy. And when he comes into the room, he would jump on everyone. He doesn't think twice. If he won't think that, oh, this person's fragile or anything, or, you know, you can't jump on them. So I was always scared of taking him on play dates. And I didn't like taking him out too much, especially like if I went to a cafe, I wouldn't take him with me. I would avoid going to certain places because I was worried how he'd react. Would he push someone, or would he, like, I was just worried about his behavior all the time. And he doesn't have behavioral issues, but I was just conscious, very, very conscious of how he behaves and how different he is from other children his age. I think because maybe other children weren't as boisterous. When Xavier saw someone new, he'd want to go up and hug him. But because he's so energetic, when he hugs them, they'd probably both fall over. And then the other child would cry. And yeah. I'd feel really bad about what he's done. Even though he hasn't done anything bad, he's just been playful. I'm always thinking of, like, you know when you see a dog that's really playful and it jumps on you and you like get thrown backwards. That's what Xavier's like, to some extent. But yeah, and then when Zaira was born, I realised, how am I supposed to take two of them out now? Like, two of them is harder than one. And then I looked back on all the, I guess, opportunities I missed with Xavier, all the things that I turned down because I was worried about how Xavier was going to behave, or all the things I didn't do with Xavier because I was worried that he'd misbehave in some way. But I guess all that was related to some sort of anxiety that I had. And when I had Zaira, it sort of changed my perspective, and I thought, hold on, they're not bad. It's just me worrying and overthinking and overstressing and overanalyzing things. If I plan things and just try and organize it a little bit more, maybe we can have fun. And I've tried to do that a few times, and it's worked. It's worked with both of them, and I'm really happy. I feel a bit sad that I missed out on things before, but I can't change that. Mm-hmm. So I'm just trying to, I guess, organize my thoughts a little bit more, and not put so much pressure on myself to get things right. Or if he does have a tantrum, then he has a tantrum. It's not the end of the world. It's not a reflection of my parenting. It's just he's having a tantrum. I mean, I had a tantrum just before I came in here, but that's for another day. But yeah, and it's just about breathing and trying not to put too much pressure on yourself. That's what I think anyway. That really helps.
I think you're right. I think as well, it's a lot of people think that they're stuck with anxiety and it's not curable, or there's nothing that you can do about it, especially when you're so deep in it. You feel like you're drowning and you don't think that there's a way for you to get out. But actually, like you said, there are things that you can do, and it's definitely about one of the things I think for me as well. It's about organizing your thoughts. So you mentioned about techniques that you use to help with your anxiety. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that and what you do and how it helps you, maybe?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think I'm becoming more aware of when I'm about to get really anxious, when I'm actually becoming really anxious. So what I try to do is I stop what I'm doing, and then I just try to breathe, like just breathe and exhale more than I inhale. So have a short breath in and then hold it and then breathe out longer. I've read somewhere it's to do with the fight or flight response. So that really helps me. Just by that breathing technique, you just sort of think a bit more clearly, and you're getting that oxygen into your brain, and it's helping you calm down. Well, it definitely helps me calm down a lot. If I know I've got a really busy day ahead, or if there's something, like there's an event taking place and I'm really stressed about it, I'll put some lavender oil on like my pulse points. Mm-hmm. And I think the smell of that really helps calm me. And the other thing that I would say is I just try to plan things ahead. So if I've got to take the kids out somewhere, both of them, and I'm by myself, I've got no help, I will try to make sure that everything's organized. Like I've got the bag ready, I know where I'm going, I know how I'm getting there. And try not to put too much pressure on myself, but also try not to organize too much, because I find that the more things I organize with the kids, if there's 2-3 different things, it overwhelms them. and then they're more likely to have a tantrum. But if I just have one thing organized for the day, and I explain it to Xavier a lot more as well, because he's starting to understand these things, then he knows what's coming, so he doesn't kick off as much as I would expect. So he's not that upset about, turning the telly off or stopping to play with his toys because we have to go out. So yeah, there's a bit of communication there as well.
That's really helpful, actually. And I think for me as well, personally, I found the lavender oil and the actual oil is really calming. You don't think that it has an effect and it actually helps, but actually it does. It really does make a difference. And again, it's like planning, it's organizing your thoughts, like you said, and the communication channel is open.
I think the other thing is also, so if I'm feeling anxious about something, or there's something coming up and I know I'm really worried about it, it helps to talk about it to someone else. Even if that's your friend or your partner or anyone else, just talk to them and just explain what you're so anxious about. And sometimes they'll come up with a solution that you didn't think of. So I often find that if I'm worried about something, then I'll talk to my husband and he will ask me, what's the problem? What are you most concerned about? And then it shifts your perspective. And sometimes he just says to me, well, if you're that worried about it, don't do it. Yeah. If it's affecting you to that extent that you don't want to go to an event, and it's affecting you, your sleep, and you're really worried about it and you're constantly on edge, then don't go. Sometimes that I know sometimes you can't help it, you have to go, you don't have a choice, but other times it's like, oh, I didn't know that was an option not to go. It sounds so simple, but if it's not compulsory, you don't have to go, then don't.
Yeah, definitely. You just sort of take yourself out of that situation, don't you?
Yeah.
To prevent yourself from like dealing with that anxiety as such.
Yeah,
I mean, makes sense. Or
it sounds like it's kind of avoidance as well, but if you can't deal with it at this point in time, that doesn't mean you won't ever be able to deal with that situation again. It just means you're not quite ready for it yet.
Yeah.
And you just have to focus on the things that you can control, because there are lots of things that you can't control. But if you try to focus on what you can control and try and deal with that, might make it easier.
Yeah. And it's more yourself, isn't it? You can't control other people. You can't control your surroundings, but you can control yourself. And like you said, whatever helps in your mind make things easier for you, make things better for you, then that's what you've got to do. Sometimes you just have to prioritize yourself.
Yeah, that's definitely something I'm working towards, trying to prioritize me. And also it's the way you react as well. I found that it's something I read actually the other day. Basically, if something happens to you, you shouldn't react straight away. You're supposed to pause, think about it, process it, and then react. That is something I struggled with immensely, because something happens to me, I react instantaneously. But that's not always the best way.
It's so funny. I was talking about the same thing the other day, about how I feel in myself that I changed in that way. I think that's been on my mind for quite a long time. And I was just thinking, a couple of months ago, if something happened to me, I would have reacted straight away. I would have jumped to conclusions. I would have jumped to assumptions, and I would have lost the plot, like, completely. But now I've learned to be like, okay, hold on a minute, process my thoughts, and then speak or act if I have to. And oh my God, that's made such a difference. Not to only people around me, but just to myself and my own mental health. Just being able to deal and process with things so much better, and being able to let go of things that maybe I wouldn't have before because I've thought about it. And I'm not feeling guilty about the actions that I've taken without thinking, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. You're going to have to share your tips on how to do that, because I need to work on it majorly.
Honestly, I don't have any tips. It's just about your mind. You know what? The hardest thing is controlling your mind. And it's about affirmations. It's about constantly repeating to yourself what you want to do, what don't you want to be like, and what are you going to do to stop that, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
it's such a difficult thing to explain to somebody, because it's a journey that you have to take yourself, isn't it?
Of course.
It's about knowing yourself as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's not easy. Or it certainly wasn't for me.
No, it's not easy. But yeah, you're right, it is all about a journey, and it's the little things, the little habits you form each day that help to change the way you are. Because often we hear people say, oh, you've changed, and it's always like a negative connotation to it, but we're supposed to be changing. We're supposed to be constantly evolving.
Yeah.
If I was the same person I was 15 years ago, I would not be very happy.
No, definitely not.
Because you don't want to be the same person that you used to be. You want to be a better version of yourself. Obviously, when no one's perfect, but if you try to constantly do little things in improving yourself, and then when you improve yourself, you hopefully will improve the relationships that you're surrounded by. And all those little things add up in the end.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well, I know I keep saying it's about your thought processes and things like that, but like if you see a behavior in yourself and you think about, oh, why have I done this? You have to stop and sort of reflect on it. And self-reflection, it makes a massive difference.
Yeah.
And when you become aware of a behavior or something, an action that you're doing, and you make a conscious effort to change that, that's when it changes.
Yeah, definitely. Because often we do things and we're quick to cast the blame on someone else.
Yeah.
And we're quick to like say, oh, it was this person's fault and it was that person's fault. But we don't really take accountability ourselves.
Definitely.
And I think it's so hard to take accountability of something you've done wrong and then admit it to yourself, but then also admit it to the other person and then try to change it.
Yeah, that's so true. That is so true.
Yeah.
So for people who feel like they may struggle with anxiety, can we talk about some of the maybe symptoms, that people might be facing, maybe if they don't know if it's anxiety or not?
Right. So with me, I think I know when I'm anxious, it's when I'm feeling really, really nervous about something. I'm on edge. I'm really restless. I'm snapping really quickly. And then I think to myself, what is it? Is it because I've had a lack of sleep because of the baby? But is it something else that's triggering it? So it's just thinking about it a lot, trying to be a bit more self-aware of, is there something coming up that unconsciously I've been thinking about and I'm worried about? Also, my breathing increases. So if I'm in a situation when I'm feeling anxiety, like for example, when I went to the supermarket the first time after COVID, I remember I started sweating. And I was breathing really heavily, and I was just I didn't know what to do. Like I knew I had to buy things, but I didn't know. I couldn't concentrate on what I needed to get, where I needed to go, and it's like the thoughts were muddled up in my head for some reason.
Yeah.
I knew I was going into the supermarket. I knew I had to buy things. I knew I had to pay for it and then leave. But that process just seemed to get all muddled up. And I couldn't breathe, and then obviously I had the mask on. So yeah, it was a combination of different things. But some other sort of symptoms that people can have when they're anxious is having that sense of panic. Like you're panicking about something, or you think there's some danger approaching. Like I mentioned, the breathing rapidly. Another symptom is feeling really weak or tired, or if you can't sleep properly, you're having difficulty sleeping because of thoughts that are keeping you up at night. So that happens to me quite a bit actually, now that I think about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes it could be related to sleep problems and just not being able to control the worry that you have. And like I mentioned earlier, avoiding certain situations or things because it's going to trigger your anxiety.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think for me, the first time that I felt the anxiety taking over completely was at a point in my life where I was so stressed about everything, about my job. I hated my job. I didn't want to go to work. Obviously, I've changed jobs now, but at that point, I couldn't. It was affecting my personal life. I was constantly arguing with my husband, with my family. It was just taking over, and I couldn't understand why it was happening. I wasn't sleeping, like you were saying. I was stressed all the time. My blood pressure was high. I was having like heart palpitations and things like that. It was so bad, to the point I had to stop and think to myself, why is this happening? Like, why is this happening to me? I've never been like this before, and all of a sudden I've had all of these weird things where I can't sleep, I can't turn my thoughts off. I'm constantly nervous all the time. I'm stressed. I'm fighting with people. What is causing all of this? And then I took a step back, and like I mentioned before, it's about the self-reflection thing. And glad that I was able to do that, because I know at that point it could have got so much worse for me. But then realized that it's anxiety. It's the anxiety that's causing all of this. And then doing research in all of that as well, I found out something that apparently like women with PCOS are 3 times more likely to suffer from things like anxiety and depression and other mental health conditions because of the hormones.
That's a staggering figure, isn't it?
And because of the stress and things like that, it was making it worse. My hormones were completely out of control. And so all of that together just led to this massive build-up of anxiety. And then it just exploded. It just came out in ways that I was just like, what am I doing? Like, this isn't me. This isn't the person that I am. And then you've got to try and take hold of that and try and deal with it, if you know what I mean. Yeah. It's not the easiest thing to do, but you know that you don't want to go on like that forever.
Yeah. It's hard work. But like you said, you don't want to be that person. You've got to try and remind yourself, what kind of person do you want to be? And are you behaving in a way that you'd be, I guess, proud of? And if you're not, then it's something to think about, isn't it?
Yeah, but sometimes it's so hard to control as well, and especially when you don't know where to do and you feel like you've completely lost control. Then what do you do?
I mean, when you were going through your anxiety, was there a particular point where you think, oh, hold on, this isn't me? Did something trigger that self-reflection?
I think one day it was actually a conversation, not even a conversation. I think I was having an argument with my husband, and it got to a point where I thought our marriage was going to break down.
Oh, wow.
Because I've never, like, my husband, if you know him, guys, he's such a calm person, honestly speaking, and he deals with a lot of stuff for me. But at that point, we were having this intense argument, and I just thought to myself, what am I doing? Why? I couldn't control it, Zed. I was blurting out all of this stuff. I was so angry, but in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, why am I doing this? But I can't control it.
Oh, wow. So you knew that what you were doing wasn't right, but you couldn't stop yourself.
The weirdest feeling. I couldn't stop myself. And at that point, I realized, what is going on? Something has to change. Like, why am I doing this? And that was the point I realized. That was it. If I didn't sort myself out, I was going to lose everything. And I didn't want that.
Yeah, of course not. That's a scary thought, isn't it?
It was so scary. And I couldn't believe that I'd got to that. And I think that was the moment of realization for me.
So then what helped you? I know you mentioned about lavender, and I think the breathing techniques definitely help you as well.
Yeah, I think it was then sort of researching into how, because of the PCOS, it's slightly different. And I know it's a lot to do with my hormones and things like that. And it was a lot to do with how am I going to control my hormone side of things? What am I going to do to make that better? And that's obviously when I started researching into all of this stuff, and started making changes. But dealing with it in the short term, it was similar things to you, like the breathing. There would be nights where I would just like cry, but like loud cry, and I don't know why I'm crying and I can't control myself because I'm having all of these thoughts and I don't know what to do with myself. And it was just talking. It was talking to my husband about it, getting my feelings out, understanding where they're coming from and why they're happening. And that was the main thing that helped me in the short term. And then obviously in the long term, it was controlling my hormone levels and things like that that made it easier for me to deal with.
Yeah, it's so worrying, isn't it? That although it's a mental thing, obviously there's a physical aspect to it as well, isn't there? Especially when you've got PCOS, there's so much more to think about. One other thing I wanted to mention also that's helped me generally with my mental health is life coaching. So I had a life coach for, I think it was 6 months or so, and I know when someone first thinks about it, they're like, oh wow, it's psychiatric help basically. But it was really, really helpful.
But it isn't like that though, isn't it?
It's nothing like that. And it's not like a shrink that you see on telly. It's nothing like that. It was really, really helpful. It helped me organise my mind, and just small techniques that helped me on a day-to-day basis. And I can see the changes. I can see so many changes. My confidence has grown. I think my self-esteem has grown in that sense. And for those who know me, I'm a very emotional person. I cry over the littlest things. I still do, but I don't cry as much.
Yeah, that's a good thing though. And people always have this, like, I don't know, like stereotype, if you will, in your head that if you were to see someone like a counselor or life coach or even get psychiatric help, it's a bad thing, but it really isn't. And I feel like the way we think about these things and the way that we talk about these things really needs to change, because people genuinely need help. And these things genuinely make a difference.
Yeah.
Like you said, you felt it in yourself. You could see and feel the change in your body when you're just able to control your thoughts and organize them and change the way you think about yourself and other people.
Yeah. And I think the one thing that helped me with that is not making assumptions. Like I know you mentioned earlier about jumping to conclusions and making assumptions about people, but a lot of the time we try to guess what other people are thinking and what other people's motives are. But we're never going to know. You can guess as much as you want. You might be close. You might not be anywhere near to what that person's actually thinking. So that's what's helped me so much, not to try and assume what other people are thinking, what their situation is. Just do what you think is best for yourself, for your family, and obviously take into consideration other people. But at the same time, don't assume things. Don't assume that, this person's going to shut you out or this person's going to have a go at you. Yeah, and I think definitely the whole conversation around it, especially in Desi cultures, it needs to change. It really needs to change, because when we say, oh, that person's seeking help, it's like, oh, but why aren't they talking to their family? But
Your family can't solve everything.
yeah, but it's assumed, isn't it, that
Yeah.
you shouldn't talk to outsiders. You should only keep everything close. Only talk to your family if you need to, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And don't talk to anyone else.
But then when you do talk to your family, are they really providing you with the help and the support that you need? It's not always the case.
They can't, because they're not. I mean, obviously, like we've said, it helps when you talk to your partner or someone really close and talk about your feelings. But you need someone independent to maybe look at things from a different lens and make you look at things through a different lens. Because people that are close to you, they will be biased in some sort of way.
Yeah.
And their advice will be based on their own experiences rather than trying to put themselves in your shoe.
Yeah, definitely.
So there was another instance whereby in December 2019, I had a car accident. So basically, I was stationary and I was waiting to cross the junction, and a pickup truck drove into the back of my car. And at the time, my little boy, he was 11 months old, and he was in the passenger seat of the car, because I used to basically keep him in the front with me and then have the airbags switched off. But basically, it was a really, really scary experience because that was the first time I've ever had a car accident.
Wow.
And yeah, and thankfully we were both okay. And I had a bit of whiplash, and my back was a bit messed up. But I was just so grateful that the baby was okay, because that was my main thing. As soon as we had the accident, I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, is Xavier okay? Is Xavier okay? Even though he was right next to me, and he didn't scream, he didn't cry. The only time he cried is when I got out of the car. To basically, obviously, I'd parked on the side, and then I got out of the car, and I got out of the car just basically to go to his side to make sure he's okay. And he just got a bit scared when I left the car, essentially, but he was absolutely fine. But since then, I started getting some anxiety, especially when my husband would drive. And that's probably because no one else really drives me around. It's just him. It's either he drives or I drive. But I was panicking like when I drove too. So it was so bad that we would literally argue every time he was driving. And like we still have our disagreements about his driving, but not so much. But we'd argue really badly. And I was like avoiding going on road trips. And you know how much I love road trips.
Yeah, you do. But that sounds so scary. I'm just glad that you guys were both okay.
Yeah.
So, was there anything that you did or anything that helped you like deal with that? Because I know you said you've obviously got better at it. So, what was it that
Yeah.
sort of helped you with that?
So basically, with that, I'll be honest, I didn't realize I was anxious just about the car. So it wasn't until I had life coaching, and sort of in the life coaching, you talk about something that's gone wrong during the week or something that you want to work on. And I sort of explained to my life coach that every time me and Zanun were basically having loads of arguments about driving and the car. And then she sort of helped me realize that it wasn't about his driving. It was about the fact that I'd had an accident and I was scared of obviously losing Xavier and losing him and losing obviously like just our family. And it was all down to that one incident. It was nothing to do with the way he drives at the moment. It was to do with that previous experience. But talking through that with someone else was so beneficial for me because it just made me realize how illogical I was being. So when I had my accident, I wasn't actually driving the car. So it would make more sense if I was being anxious in a stationary car. So that was like one thing. I wasn't moving. So why was I so scared? Why am I so scared when I'm sitting as a passenger? And the other thing was, Zanun wasn't with me at the time. So he wasn't in the car at all. He wasn't driving. It was me that was driving. So why am I getting so scared when he's driving? It's just that I guess it was that lack of control. The fact that someone else is in control of our lives. Yeah, it just triggered loads of memories. And it was happening every single time we went out. But the more I talked about it and the more I sort of thought about, he wasn't in the car. And you just have to sort of just take yourself back and just remember that it's not the actual driving of the car. It's the fact that I'd had a bad experience in the past. So every time we were driving, I would remember that subconsciously, not even like I wasn't even thinking about it, but subconsciously, if a truck went past, my heart would start beating really fast and I'd hold on to the side, like the side of the door, or I'd just clench my hands really tight. And I was doing it so often. But the more I talked about it through life coaching, the more I tried to detach myself a little bit from the experience. That really helped. And just identifying what it was, what am I actually getting upset about?
Yeah, that's very interesting actually. It's so weird how our subconscious works and sometimes we don't actually realize it, and we internalize a lot of things. We think we're okay, but actually we're not okay. And just by pinpointing that moment, it helped you sort of overcome a little bit of your anxiety. And it's amazing how we just project things onto other people as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Without realizing that we're doing it.
Yeah. And it's sad actually, because it's usually the people that are closest to us that bear the brunt of that. But that's why we love them so much, right?
Yes, definitely. And that's why they love us so much.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I was actually reading the other day on the Mind website. They've got some really, really good like self-care information. So if you know you think you have any kind of mental health problem and you're struggling with it, I would say maybe the first thing that you do, even if you don't want to speak to anyone about it or anything like that, is there's a lot of self-care information on the website. They've got tips you can actually do yourself if you don't feel ready or confident to speak to somebody. And then obviously if you do feel confident, then maybe Mind is really good. I know they've got a lot of support for people, but also it's not just for you yourself, but they've also got information for friends and family. So if you know someone with anxiety, or if you think you know someone who's suffering with anxiety and their mental health, it's really worth having a look at the information that they've got on there, because it tells you how you can support people with mental health issues as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because you might think that this doesn't really apply to you, but you might know of someone who you can see the symptoms and they might be going through something. So if you can sort of help them and maybe help them on their journey, then yeah, it'd be great to have a look at that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. We hope you found it really useful. Like I mentioned, we'll be talking about mental health and other mental health related issues in further episodes. But hopefully this was very useful for you. If you can, we'd love it if you could provide your feedback and just share your thoughts. If it was relevant, if it was not relevant, if there's any particular topics you want us to cover, we'd welcome your thoughts on that.
Yeah, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Not Your Typical Sister. If you're listening on YouTube or any of the podcast streaming services, obviously leave us comments, reviews. We'd really appreciate it, and we'd love to hear from you. We love reading all of your comments. We will speak to you next time.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of Not Your Typical Sister.
We would love to hear your thoughts and comments. You can leave us comments and reviews on whichever streaming service you are listening through.
Don't forget to join our tribe on Instagram and Facebook at Not Your Typical Sister.
Speak to you next time.